Today I'll be giving you a new selection in literature. It is The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. It is a novel written by Mark Twain. For your information, this is not the whole poem. It is an excerpt taken from The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Before talking about the author himself, Mark Twain, and the story, let me just talk about the core skills of this selection. As students, you will be able to, number one, recognize the omniscient third person point of view. Number two, analyze the dramatic irony throughout the story. Number three, cite textual pieces of evidence to support analysis. And number four, analyze the development of the characters and events. Let's now have a clue about the author, Mark Twain. Mark Twain was born in 1835 and died in 1910, as it is stated over here. And he's the pen name of Samuel Clemens. He grew up in Missouri along the Mississippi River, and he worked in his early life as a printer, then as a riverboat captain, and then as a gold miner. Then he wrote his greatest novel, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, which later on became one of his famous works, and it contributed a lot to English literature, and it gave him the fame, it gave him the greatest title, the father of American literature. As I told you before, this is not the whole story. This is an excerpt. Takes place early in the book when Tom was asked, from his, or was commanded, let's say here, by his Aunt Polly to paint a fence. Now let's listen to the audiobook. We're going to listen to the first passage because we have some questions. Okay? Here you go. You can now listen.
From The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, novel by Mark Twain. Tom's energy did not last. He began to think of the fun he had planned for this day, and his sorrows multiplied. Soon the free boys would come tripping along on all sorts of delicious expeditions, and they would make a world of fun of him for having to work. The very thought of it burnt him like fire. He got out his worldly wealth and examined it. Bits of toys, marbles, and trash. Enough to buy an exchange of work, maybe, but not half enough to buy so much as half an hour of pure freedom. So he returned his straight end means to his pocket, and gave up the idea of trying to buy the boys. At this dark and hopeless moment, an inspiration burst upon him. Nothing less than a great, magnificent inspiration.
Okay guys, after listening to the first passage here, I just want you to go to question number one. After reading the passage from line 1 to line 12, I want you to answer these two questions, actually, because here the question number one has got two parts. Number one, how can you tell the point of view from which the story is told? And the second part, what effect does this point of view create? Let's now go to the first page. The first passage, I just want you to look at these underlining phrases, and let's say here the beginning of the sentences, and what do you infer from this, from these phrases or these, let's say here, sentences. When he said, he began to think, he had planned, so he returned. Can you notice that here the author is using the pronoun he to refer to Tom, as if he wants to say that the narrator refers to Tom as he, the pronoun he. So here the voice telling the story is an outside voice. It is third person point of view. So if you are asked a question, okay, in which point of view is the story told, you could say that it is told from the third person point of view. Why? Because the author is using pronoun he to refer to the character Tom. So here, if you are asked also, cite some textual evidence, okay, here you have 3 pieces of textual evidence to show how do you know that the author is using the third person point of view. Let's now go to the second part of the question. The second part of the question says, what effect does this point of view create? Okay? So what do you think, guys, here? What effect does this create when the author is using pronoun like he or she, and we know that those pronouns in one way or another refer to the third person point of view? So what effect does this create? Definitely you can answer that the narrator is able to present a humorous view of Tom's situation. Let me explain it for you. When the author is using third person point of view, he can be able to present more humorous views of any character in the story. It's exactly what happened in this story. So here the author is using the third person point of view to be able to present a humorous view of Tom's situation. Why? Because when the author is using third person point of view, it is said that third person narrator, okay, know more than first person narrator. So here the author is able to present a humorous view for any character in the story when he is using the third person point of view. Is that clear? Let's now move to the second page, guys. Now listen to the audiobook, guys.
He took up his brush and went tranquilly to work. Ben Rogers hove in sight presently, the very boy of all boys, whose ridicule he had been dreading. Ben's gait was the hop, skip, and jump, proof enough that his heart was light and his anticipations high. He was eating an apple and giving a long, melodious whoop at intervals, followed by a deep-toned ding-dong-dong, ding-dong-dong, for he was personating a steamboat. As he drew near, he slackened speed, took the middle of the street, leaned far over to starboard, and rounded to ponderously and with laborious pomp and circumstance, for he was personating the big Missouri, and considered himself to be drawing 9 feet of water. He was boat and captain and engine bells combined, so he had to imagine himself standing on his own hurricane deck, giving the orders and executing them. "Stop her, sir!"
Okay, guys, after listening to this passage, I just want you to go to the guiding questions. Let's now go together to guiding questions, guys. Here you go. The second question, it is from line 15 to line 17, so focus on these 2 lines. What does Twain mean when he says Ben's heart was light and his anticipations high? This is the first part of the second question. The second part, what is the impact of the phrase on the tone of feeling of the text? Let's now see together. We can go to the second page here. As you can see, I just want you to focus on the underlining lines here. Okay, forget about the first line. Go to line 17 to line 15 to 17. Line 15 to 17. Ben's gait was the hop, skip, and jump proof enough that his heart was light and his anticipations high. Okay. Look at these two lines and try to answer the question. Let me just read the question for you. What does Twain mean when he says Ben's heart was light and his anticipations high? Okay, think of it as if the author is trying to express Ben's feeling. So he's saying that Ben is feeling happy and carefree. Ben feels happy and carefree. This is the answer of the first part. The second part of the question, what is the impact of the phrase on the tone or feeling of the text? Okay, just have a look again and again to these two lines. Read them, try to understand them. As long as they represent that Ben feels happy and carefree. So what is the impact of the phrase on the tone or feeling of the text? Actually, it creates some suspense about how Ben's encounter with Tom will go, because his good mood is in stark contrast to the way Tom is feeling. Let me explain this to you in another way. This, in one way or another, creates a feeling of suspense about how Ben feels and how Tom feels. We know already that Ben feels happy and carefree, while Tom feels so unhappy. Why? Because Tom was planning for a very funny day, and unfortunately he calmly begins his work. He was asked to go to work. So I just want you to look to the first line. I already underlined it. Went tranquilly to work. That means Tom was unhappy. Why? Because he missed the fun that he had planned for the day, and he goes to the work. Is that clear, guys? Okay, now let's go to the third page and listen to the audiobook. Are you ready?
Ting-a-ling-ling!
Yeah.
The headway ran almost out, and he drew up slowly toward the sidewalk. Ship up to back! Ting-a-ling-ling! His arms straightened and stiffened down his sides. Set her back on the starboard! Ting-a-ling-ling! Chow! Cha-chow! Wow! Chow! His right hand, meantime, describing stately circles, for it was representing a 40-foot wheel. Let her go back on the larboard! Ting-a-ling-ling! Chow! Cha-chow! Chow! The left hand began to describe circles. Stop the starboard! Ting-a-ling-ling! Stop the larboard! Come ahead on the starboard! Stop her! Let your outside turn over slow! Ting-a-ling-ling! Chow! Wow! Wow! Get out that headline! Lively now! Come! Out with your spring line! What are you about there? Take a turn round that stump with the bite of it! Stand by that stage now! Let her go! Done with the engine, sir! Ting-a-ling-ling! Shh! 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 Trying the gauge cocks. Tom went on whitewashing, paid no attention to the steamboat. Ben stared a moment, and then said, Hiya! You're up a stump, ain't you? No answer. Tom surveyed his last touch with the eye of an artist. Then he gave his brush another gentle sweep, and surveyed the result as before. Ben ranged up alongside of him. Tom's mouth watered for the apple, but he stuck to his work.
Okay, guys. Do you know what does the word survey mean? If you survey something, it means that you inspect it. Okay?
To his work. Ben said, "Hello, old chap. You got to work, hey?" Tom wheeled suddenly and said, "Why, it's you, Ben. I warn't noticing." "Say, I'm going in a swimming, I am. Don't you wish you could? But of course, you'd druther work, wouldn't you? Course you would." Tom contemplated the boy a bit and said, "What do you call work?" "Why, ain't that work?" Tom resumed his whitewashing and answered carelessly, "Well, maybe it is, and maybe it ain't. All I know is, it suits Tom Sawyer."
Okay, guys, let's now just ask you a question, a very, a small question about contemplated. Do you know the meaning of this word? Actually, when you contemplate, you look at something attentively or thoughtfully. So it means to look at something attentively or thoughtfully. Okay? Now let's go to question number 3 and answer it. Okay, here you go. Let's now see question number 3 together. So you should focus on the lines from 53 to 64. So go to page number 397 and you should focus on the lines 53 to 64 to find out the answer. Okay, the question says, what are two things that the omniscient narrator knows and tells the readers that Ben Rogers doesn't know? That is the first part. The second part, what effect does the narrator's point of view create? Before answering this question, let me just talk about the omniscient narrator. When the story is narrated by omniscient narrator, that means, okay, omniscient narrator knows everything about the characters and the story events. So when the story is told by an omniscient narrator, it means that here the narrator knows everything about the characters and the story events. Is that clear? Let's now answer the question. Okay, you go here to page number 397. Look here to the underlining. Okay, let's say here phrases and sentences. Okay, you can figure out the answer throughout these underlining lines. Okay, the first part of the question says, again, what are two things that the omniscient narrator knows and tells reader that Ben Rogers doesn't know? If you look here to the first underlining line, why, it's you, Ben, I weren't noticing. What does this mean? What does this mean, guys? What inference can you make from this line? Can't you think of it like this way? Tom here actually does notice Ben's presence. So here Tom does notice Ben's presence, even though he says that weren't noticing. It means that he's pretending that he's not noticing him. And here also we could say that Tom considers painting the fence work, although he says otherwise and claims it suits him. That means he dislikes painting the fence, but he pretends or claims that it suits him. So you could answer here the question in this way, that Tom actually does notice Ben's presence, but he pretends that he is not noticing him when he says weren't noticing. And he also considers painting the fence work. It means that he dislikes painting the fence. But he pretends or claims that this work suits him. Why? In order to deceive Ben. He doesn't want, Ben to feel that he's disturbed by this work, or he's annoyed by this work. And he pretends that this work suits him, and he claims that this work is not bothering him. Is that clear, guys? Okay, that's all about our lesson today. Thank you so much for your nice listening, for your time, and see you later, guys, in other videos to continue talking about this story. Thank you so much again and again. See you later.